Hi, I'm Somer Hackley.
And I'm Zen Mac. This is the Art of Search Hiring Manager series.
These are stories and insights about all things hiring. All right, Zen. So last week I had asked you about your career defining moment, that story, that search that really left an impression on you. And I loved what you shared. And so, yeah, I was curious. Do you want to hear mine?
Oh, I definitely want to hear yours. So, Summer, what was the career defining search that really clicked for you?
All right. And like you, there's so many. And if you name a year, right? If you name a year, I can name one or two. You're like,
Yep.
it could be like Jeopardy, like 2013. What was it? It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
know, I know.
I can
Um,
break it down into quarters too,
I
I
know,
bet.
right in the corner. It's so funny because if candidates reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, we spoke in 2014 about something," I'm like, "I know exactly what it is. I look at your company, I look at what you do, I know exactly what search that was. I know exactly what we talked about."
But yet I
Anyway,
can't remember if I locked the front door on the way out,
I know.
right?
I'm like, my hair iron is off. It's off. Anyway, so I had this search and it was a very hard search. It was, VP plus level, public company. Worked on it. It was one of those searches that went on for over 6 months. Hiring manager, I love, but very, very tough. High bar, but tons of respect. It was hard to find people that fit all the qualifications. And so we got down to offer stage. We had one candidate in play. Everyone else was in now. And this candidate started acting really condescending toward me and toward the internal recruiter, but they interviewed really well. They interviewed really well internally. They're the kind of person I think that can manage up and across really well. But sometimes I think being a female recruiter, vendor is kind of like being the help or the host or, the waiter, the waitress, that person. And we can see people's true colors. And if
Mhm.
we're getting shushed at, or
Oh, was that what happened?
it was just, yeah, it was just a lot of like, wait a
Mm.
second, like now that we're talking about compensation, and it wasn't just me because they were doing it, and the internal recruiter was very involved too, and so they were doing it to them too. And I said something to the internal recruiter. I'm like, are you getting this impression from this candidate? They're like, yes. And so they threw a call on my calendar. I saw all the different stakeholders from this company. It must have been 7 people and me.
Mhm.
And the head of recruiting just asked me in front of everybody, like, what do we do? And we had no other candidates. We were at offer stage. And I said to pull the candidate. I was just like, you know what? We can't hire this person. I'm even like getting hot-headed now thinking about it because it was so sad. It's so sad to disappoint everybody and to have to start over on such a hard
Mm.
search. But at the end of the day, we actually ended up placing an even better candidate into that role. And
Mm.
that was they told me later, they were like, most recruiters would have just said, oh, they're fine, they're fine. Let's just go with it, yada yada, and just not even worry about a candidate being like that toward me and the internal recruiter, or not mention it. And and I pulled the candidate, and we went forward, we found a better candidate at the end of the day, and that candidate thrived, got promoted, was there for years and years and years. And it was a great, great, great ending to that story. And after that, that client gave me so much work. They gave me so many searches to work on because they knew I had their back. And I
Yeah.
would say the honest, hard truth. And it was just so cool that something that felt so horrible at the time would have such a great, happy ending, both with the placement, but also with just the client and for me and my team. And yeah, so it was rough though. It was rough. But that was
Oh.
one of those, you know what? I don't have to, because I think for whatever reason, or maybe it's not a mystery. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in recruiting. We're trained to just make everyone happy. And what that means is tell everyone it's a rosy picture all the time and everything's fine. And in reality, there's a lot of like, I don't know if the candidate's interested, or I don't know if this person's a good person, or I don't know. Like, just tell people. They respect you more for it, and we can talk all day about that too. But I think that for me was a big moment of realizing that transparency and raising red flags and being a true partner is actually more important than just like placing someone and moving on to the next one. And you know, you kind of get rid of that high pressure sales element, but you have to get there on your own.
I love the story. I think it really illustrates the difference when you think of what we do in recruiting and the industry in general, it can be very transactional, right? You could push the thing away and just be like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Well, it probably could have been okay and they might have lasted the guarantee, but then that still would have been a bad hire for the organization because that behavior doesn't just go away. And so you were able to help them assess that early and called it out. And I think that was really brave. And I encourage everybody, I said this last week, but this idea of you're not just a messenger, right? You have a filter. You talk to probably more candidates for the job than the company had probably in a month's worth of time than they've had the entire time they've been hired for this role like this, because that's our job. And so if you didn't apply your own filter, if you didn't get your own assessment, I think that's a miss. And you obviously didn't miss, and you did a great job. Something else that I used to do too is pay attention to how the candidate interacts with people at the front desk. The perception of somebody that's at a quote unquote lower level than them.
Hmm.
And that says a lot about character, and that says a lot about how this person would work with other people on the team. So that's a really important lesson.
Well, thank you for hearing my story. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with you again next week.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, then.